Joining me now is the Deputy Labor Leader Richard Marles. We've seen the sitting calendar for next year. Before we get to the Omicron and the debate around that, what do you make of this? It looks like, I mean, it's very clear it's either a March election or a May election off the back of a budget scheduled for the 29th of March.
Well, I think we knew that by virtue of the fact that we haven't had an election this year. I mean, they were really the only two windows left. I just heard Andrew speak before. I can't remember a budget occurring in March before. I think it's the only time it's happened since I've been in the Parliament since 2007. But the real admission in this is just how, firstly, the government has no agenda, and secondly, how concerned they are about their own divisions, that they are not wanting to gather people in their own party room in Canberra. And so you've got 7 sitting days before the budget. I mean, normally, to put it in context, we would expect to have 5 sitting weeks in 7 over the course of February and March. Right now, this schedule has us sitting for 7 days, has the Senate sitting for 5 days. I mean, this is an extraordinary admission of failure on the government's part about governing this country.
So that you're arguing that the lack of sitting in March, that vacant spot, is simply to avoid scrutiny.
I don't think there can be any doubt about the fact that it's both to avoid scrutiny and to avoid their own disunity, which we've seen on display since the beginning of last week. I mean, this is a government that doesn't want its people getting together for all the conversations that they might then have. This is a government who doesn't like the scrutiny of Parliament. This is a government that's running away, and this sitting calendar is the government running up the white flag on trying to govern this country.
Are you prepared for another fake period of the fake campaign? Because that's what it will be, that March window. If the Prime Minister doesn't call an election for March, does have that budget and carry on as we're saying, that's basically another campaigning period, surely.
The way I describe it, Kieran, is I think in opposition you live in the world of contingencies. We've been preparing for a December election. As soon as that date passed, we've got our heads in the space of March. If that date passes, we'll be ready for May. I mean, at the end of the day, we've got to be ready for whenever the government's going to call it, and we are.
And is the Labor Party going to flesh out a bit more of its vision as well? Because at the moment, that's the one risk, isn't it? That you've been focusing on their weaknesses, but the criticism is, or the critique is, that you haven't got enough of a plan yourself.
Well, I actually think we've been putting a lot of policy on the table over the last couple of years, and more so than I think that we are given credit for. But we will be making our positions on all the issues which face the Australian people well and truly before they are required to vote. There'll be no doubt about that.
On Omicron, the Labor Party focusing on the lack of purpose-built quarantine facilities. Do we still need them as we're going to be living with COVID-19 and this virus, the latest variant, we hope? I was talking to Professor Bennett from Deakin University earlier. She's saying the early signs are that it might be mild symptoms. Obviously, we have to wait a few weeks before being definitive on that. We hope that's the case, but is there a situation where you build those facilities, they become white elephants?
Well, I think, well, firstly, on Omicron, let's hope that's where it's at, but we're in early days yet, so we just need to be cautious about our predictions there, but equally, I think we need to be calm in our response to this. The fundamental point, I think, for the Australian people is they've done such a great job in getting vaccinated that we stand in good stead. But if we come out of COVID-19, if we come out of this pandemic without having purpose-built quarantine facilities for whatever we might face in the future, then as a nation we will have missed an enormous play here. I mean, it's not just about COVID, although there could well be further variants in the future, but I think it is about whatever we might face going forward. And the lesson that we have to learn from this pandemic is the need to have facilities of this kind.